The show must go on, discussing preliminary discussion of Johan Cruyff's My Turn, his autobiography. And I think really the most important message here is that you play to entertain. Entertainment is the last, that's where the buck stops. Some people say every sports event ends in a fight. That's why the UFC is so popular. And I agree with that to some extent. Fighting is really what we all cherish as humans, because I guess we evolved to fight and it excites us. But I think it's even one step further. The only thing that really matters is to be entertained. You got to have a story. And I think that's what comes across in Cruyff's book more than anything else. There's a lot of technical advice. There's a lot of, I think, really first grade advice for coaching and playing. But in the end, the story is that you have to be entertained. And I think if you put this first, then you will win. You will win because entertainment wins always. And I would also take this one step further. It even applies to the hedge fund business. You've got to entertain your investors. Now, what does that mean? Of course, it doesn't mean that I'm going to do step dances in front of them or play the violin. It means that they need to enjoy making the money that you're making. This is what Cruyff teaches me. And I think when you read books like this book, it's almost like surrounding yourself with great people. It's the same thing. Like, it helps understand the way people like Johan Cruyff think. And he is a great person with all his shortcomings. He has lots of shortcomings. He's vain. He's to some extent not even honest about certain things. But that's not important. What he really is, most importantly, is an excellence seeker. And he does that by putting entertainment first. He reminds me a little bit of Elon Musk in that sense. And I think that it might not be the path to success. You see, you can't entertain by wanting to entertain. That's not the point. You've got to do all the homework, all the little details that end up in a situation where you even have the ability to entertain. This is the Not Even Wrong podcast. It's June 17th, 2023. This is Krim Delco. Since the last update, we're up 3.5%. The market is up 0.5%. For the year, we're up 122%. The market's up 15%. We're outperforming by 107%. My Turn, Johan Cruyff's autobiography. I'm about halfway through the book, so this is not a formal discussion of the book yet, but I wanted to bring this out because it's so important. It's so crucial in moments when, let's say, you're not really sure where your career is going or your life or what you should be doing next. And as a North Star, I think entertaining the people around you, being the best you can be to make them happy to be around you, is really what matters the most. That's what every buck stops. It stops in sports. It stops in the hedge fund business. If I invest in companies, if I do hanky-panky stuff that bore me, and somehow maybe I'm able to squeeze a few percent of profit out of it, and then I tell my investors, for example, well, I went long in Hewlett-Packard and short Dell, and it's because their margins are 0.5 point better than we expect them to. That's not a good story. It's just boring, and nobody wants to be involved in stuff like that, even if it makes money. There's a lot of things that maybe you can do in life to make a few bucks here and there. But what really matters is to be entertained, to entertain people. The most entertaining solution ends up probably winning. That's what Musk said, and I strongly believe in that. Now, in Cruyff's book, it's about football. It's not about, the hedge fund business or anything like that. There's a little bit of business talk in there in terms of, for example, how to run a club and things along those lines. But it's definitely a sports book. This is a sportsman. He has been playing football all his life. He's famous for that. So let's leave the realm of the discussion now within football. But I just wanted to take this out because the purpose of this podcast is not to talk about football, of course. It is to talk about the hedge fund business. It's to give people a sense for what it feels like to run a hedge fund. So we read books because, like I said many times, it's not just a pastime of hedge fund managers to read books and I just said it, entertain themselves. This was definitely a Freudian mispronouncement. Of course, I meant we read books not just as a sort of educational basis, but this is part of the business. Reading books is part of the hedge fund business. That's very, very important. So because because we have to evolve our thinking, our minds. We have to think in terms that other people aren't thinking. We have to develop these skills, and there's no other way than do that through books. Books are kind of a mirror, an intellectual mirror that we put against our network of synapses, that somehow, hopefully in the end, we get to make decisions that are better for us, and if you want, also replicate themselves throughout our lives, and who knows, maybe even the multiverse. In other words, we find better solutions to problems, and therefore we progress in life. So back to the book. Cruyff talks about his career. It's not the most intellectually sort of astonishing book. It's actually not even that entertaining, which is kind of almost funny, but it doesn't matter. He was a very entertaining football player. For example, there's one scene in the book where he talks about a penalty that they took when he played for Ajax, and they passed the ball, which you can do. Nobody does that in a penalty, but they did it just to entertain the people. I think it's a great example of how you really try to be interesting. You try to entertain people. I think I said the word probably about 100 times already. What do I mean with that? Well, it means that, look, in the end, let's say if you take a UFC fight, if you take a football game, if you take any kind of sports event, I mean, who wants to watch the sports event just for the win? I think, let's say there is a team in European football called Atletico Madrid. They're famous for playing very ugly and boring football. And whenever I hear, let's say they made the final of the Champions League, my stomach churns, because having to watch them for 90 minutes is painful. So that's just as an example of the opposite of what Cruyff is saying. And what Cruyff is saying is really that you want to maximize for entertainment. Now, to me, that has a much more deep meaning. It's not just that you are trying to, I don't know, collect claps or somehow sell tickets at the stadium or any of that stuff. That's all part of it. I think it goes to that Niners coach Walsh, I forgot his first name, who says the score takes care of itself. In that book, he talks about how he built the 49ers franchise. Very similarly, in the end, the score takes care of itself. Meaning, if you put everything in place, and I would say if you add the entertainment factor as the North Star of that everything, so everything meaning, the janitor, the groundsman, the people in the cafeteria, the coaches, the assistant coaches, everybody's North Star is to build an entertaining team that plays and wins. Now, you can't entertain in sports without winning. That goes without saying. So winning is part of it, but it has to be more than that. And I think if you put entertainment as the North Star, if you put fun and joy, because these things go with it. You can't entertain somebody if you don't have joy and fun in what you do. So it goes, it's one of those things that you can really analyze, and once you open up that door of entertainment, everything falls into place. You're just happy doing what you're doing, and you're going to do it well. And this is why it's so powerful. So I would say this is just a preliminary discussion. Cruyff talks about some of the details that I find very important. For example, technical skill. He drills for technical skills. And I think that, to me, this is just for anybody who's in the football business or coaches who listen to this. Please teach your kids, teach your players the technical skills. More often than not, I see coaches throw in boys and men into the battlefield of a football pitch, and not training them properly. A lot of skills are trainable. Control the ball, pass the ball, juggle 1,000 times, header the ball properly, catch the ball as a goalie. Those are things you can train. It's not going to make you an entertaining player. It takes more than that. And it probably takes that little extra in the end that is necessary, like the Ronaldos of this world, the Messis and the Cruyffs and the Socrateses and Falcaos. Yes, of course. But we can start with the simple little things, the little details that modern coaches like Thomas Tuchel and Guardiola are also propagating. That we can start with. So there are actionable things we can do before we talk about the big picture and the $1 million signings, or let's say in youth soccer, the lack of funding and the lack of this and the lack of that and whatnot. There's another beautiful scene in the book where he talks about, let's say there was a rain and the youth teams of Ajax, their training got canceled. So their youth coach took the team, put them in some sort of, I don't know, basketball hall or something, and made them practice headers. Again, this is a small little thing, but let's say in my experience with youth soccer here in the United States, I've seen many of such cancellations because of weather and things like that, sometimes justified, sometimes not justified. The problem is not the cancellation. It's okay if you cancel a training because of safety issues. The problem is that very often there is no alternative. Not always. Actually, my son played for a coach in San Francisco who actually would take the kids to the beach, for example, when there were wildfires and the air was so bad that you couldn't train on the regular pitches in San Francisco. So he would take the kids to Ocean Beach, where the air was a lot better, and train there. So there are people who have those ambitions. Most people don't, but that's for a different podcast. Let's get back to Cruyff's book. I think, again, take care of the little details, show initiative, show the desire to entertain, and you do that by doing and tweaking all the little details. Work on but if you put that North Star in your head, if you have that mentality, you have a very good chance to succeed in your endeavor to entertain, and then eventually also to win. And now let me just talk a little bit about winning. In Cruyff's book, it's kind of funny where he talks about all these things, like how he wants to entertain and how he wants to train and what he does as a coach and as a player. And then somehow the silverware just falls into place. He wins and keeps winning and keeps winning. This man has just been winning all his life. And this by itself, I think, it's something we sometimes forget. It's the same with Guardiola right now, Tom Brady, Shaquille O'Neal, these types of people, LeBron James, maybe not anymore, but those types of people, they have something that makes them keep winning. And to me, Elon Musk, Jensen Huang, those are really remarkable people, and it pays to listen to them. Thank you.